morning all. Excuse me. Hope you're all well. Hi then, Pipes and Bees, Philadelphia Pipe here, Plume and Barrel, Paul the Piper, Meeks, Josh. Who else have we got here? Rich, Brad, Mike, Gamecock Piper, Chris Garcia, Signalman, Tony from Rhode Island. How you all doing? Hope you're all well. No, this pipe is not a commission. I think this one's actually going to be for myself. This is going to be a rusticated Rhodesian. And there is the rough shaping. So I've only taken it up to 240 on the sanding. So that's going to have a very slight bend. You can see there, that's the straight line at the top there. So that comes up just a touch. I couldn't do much of a bend because it's a really short stem. So the idea was to make essentially a chubby. This is actually a bit like the Chris Morgan chubby bulldog, I guess, or hanging, whatever it's called, hanging Rhodesian. He's got something like that. So we shall see how it turns out. Josh, we'll see. I don't know. I mean, I as I say, I make so many pipes, which I say I'm making this for myself, and I end up selling it. So I'm not going to rule it out, Josh, especially being you. But it's essentially, officially, I'm making this for myself. It's got very good proportions. It's really along the lines of what I enjoy smoking, slightly shorter length shank than I usually would get. I would usually get, for myself that is, I would usually go to, let's see what this is probably about 4.5 inches. I would usually go 5.5 personally, but exactly 4.5 inches. So this, I would go another inch. And that's my sort of perfect line, but because I'm not, I've essentially specially made this much wider shank than I would normally go for. I would usually go for about an 18 or 20 mil shank myself. This is a 22, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So it's kind of a keep in the pocket kind of pipe. Yeah. It's 21.6 after sanding, so yeah, 22 mil. I'm still going to sand it a little bit more. I mean, I'm a big believer that when you rusticate a pipe, you still have to get a pretty good shape to start with, and this is already a really nice shape, I think. I could really just rusticate from here. This I've left smooth. That's going to be contrast stain. I don't know if you can see it, but it's got some really nice what did I do with that tissue? It's pretty indeed. Yes, it's not absorbing as much water because I've already sanded this to about 400, but it's got really, this will really come up nice, all being well. A couple of sand spots on it, but that will blend in with the contrast staining. So I'm just going to soften the edges a little bit, because even when you rusticate, if you're used to doing the rustication and you have a fairly even hand, so where you've got bits which are not shaped well to start with, you end up just looking not so good. You want it to still have, when you look at the profile, you still want it to have a shape, a fairly clear and defined shape, even though it's rusticated. So I'm just going to sand it a little bit. I had a bit of a cleanup on Friday, so I can see what's going on my desk, which does make life a little bit easier. Just get rid of that, and I'm trying to train myself to clean up as I go along, so that I don't have this massive cleanup job every time. still got that motor sitting on the table there, which I wired up to test. But this is, I don't know if any of you guys are electricians, this is a 220, it can be run at 110 or 220, which is the US voltages, and we run at 240 here. I've managed to get it spinning, but each time it fuses my plug. So I might have to get a converter, I'm not sure. I don't quite understand why it's fusing it, but you smoked the poker, cool. That's always going to be a good smoker. It's a nice hefty bit of briar there. It's drilled well, you shouldn't have any issues with that at all. If you'll excuse me just for a moment, I'd like to go and get a coffee. I haven't had a drink for a while, so I'll be back very, very soon. Sanity and production, I like that. That was a pipe grump moment, by the way, just... Thank you very much, everybody. I do apologise. That was rather impolite of me to expect you guys to hold on, but if I'm going to be talking, I'm going to end up being a bit parched, so forgive me. Right, that's wine number 2. Right, let's see what we've missed here. Solid looking apron. Yes, Meeks. This is an apron which I actually had made specially because I'm of generous proportions, you know. So I had it made. Most aprons I can buy online, they all go up to about just above knee level, and they go to about there. So they cover your front. When you're sitting at a chair or you're sitting at a table working on stuff, you want it to wrap around, otherwise you're just going to be covered in sawdust. So I had that specially made. A huge piece of leather, goes all the way around, pretty much. And I had these bits and pieces. To be honest, I actually thought that these would be very useful, but they're not. You tend to just put stuff down. Maybe I should teach myself to do that, but I started putting my pencil in there because I could never find my pencil, and I've lost it. So I've got more upstairs. I have to bring a couple more down. So yeah, Meeks, it's worth every penny. I mean, it's very, very well made, really solid leather, brass fixings. I think I paid about £140, so you're talking about $160, $170. It's a lot of money for an apron, but it's worth every penny. This chair has seen better, but it's actually looked after me for a long, long time. I've used it, and it's perfect for the garage. It's creaky, the arms have gone, and I've gaffer taped one of the arms. And this one I did the gaffer tape, but it snapped again. Yeah, the worse and battered they look, the better they are usually, because it's people's comfy chair, sort of favourite chair. That's why they're so battered. I'm smoking this evening. I'm going to light it up again in a second. I'm smoking one of my pipes, one of my large rusticated pipes. This one, and I've got some. Can you guess what's in it? Blend 131 from Solani. My pipe tree, made by Pipe Tree, he whittled this for me. Solani Silverflake. 7 early Mike, how you doing? Thank you. Yes, I am feeling a lot better. Thank you. Mike, Briar Blues. Good morning, good morrow. Hi, Doug. Doug Owen. Banana flavoured blend. That's just to give me a little fuel as needs arise. Paul the Piper, how you doing? How's it going out in Canada and in America at the moment with the virus? Apparently here, lots of people went out to resorts to chill out after the Prime Minister's slight easing of regulations, restrictions. And apparently there's been loads of arrests because people have been congregating too much. We were thinking of going out tomorrow. but I'm not sure. We might have to revise that. We'll see. The pipe arrived. Excellent, Mike. From Italy. Well, your previews page where? On your site, Mike? Oh, right. Okay, cheers, Mike. I'm going to take a look at it. So I've got first dibs in case I do want it, right, Mike? $23. Okay. This one's 22. Hey, Jimmy, how you doing? This tobacco's so good. I don't recall ever trying a new blend and going through the tobacco so quickly. Cool. Yeah, 100% Meeks. I think that's a very wise approach. I went to visit my parents today, and we've got another festival. We had Passover a few weeks ago, and Passover is an unbelievably family-orientated kind of festival where everybody gets together. And my parents always used to lead the Passover Seder table, which is a very traditional festive meal, which goes on for hours. And they had to literally sit on their own in their apartment, which they haven't done in over 50 years. From when they had their first child, obviously they'd been with their children, and then as we've got married, with their married children, and with the grandchildren and great-grandchildren now. So the first time, I think, in over 50 years that my parents celebrated Passover on their own. And now we've got Shavuos, which is coming up the end of the week after next. And my mother said, I was asking my mother, I said, so what have you cooked up for the festival? Any nice meals? She said, don't talk to me about the festival. She can't believe that she's going to have to be another festival alone. But needs must, thank God they've managed to avoid it, and please God it'll continue that way. I'm currently smoking Solani Blend 131, which is an aromatic. It's a Weber with a single malt whiskey topping, and it's really very good. Castella's still shut down. It's going to be interesting to see how this, once countries do emerge, how it's going to affect everything. There'll be companies around where they've possibly got staff members who have been ill, or God forbid, even worse. So maybe they'll have. So you might see certain lines in pipes, slowing down or not continuing, that kind of thing. Let's hope not. Let's hope none of them have been affected in that way. And the thing to worry about as well is that the vast majority of these pipe carving houses are led by older people, people in the risky zone, in the risky age group. That's a worry. Hey Andrew, how you doing? When we're done here, Andrew, go back to the beginning of the video and you can catch some of the the making of this pipe so far. Hey Tam, yeah, London is doing very well, and not reinfection, you mean new infections. Thank you, Mike, appreciate that. Look forward to your order. Well, my wife was looking online at the news and she saw that there's a worrying increase in new cases, so definitely the possibility of a second wave is out there, and that is a worry. But at the moment, London seems to be faring well. Well, when I say faring well, it's had its peak and it suffered big time. But it's now, obviously the peak is in other parts of the country, and hopefully they won't have it for too long. So I'm just going to give it a rough sanding, and then I'm going to start rusticating. It's still worth me sanding it a bit more, because I might still want to leave some of the shank smooth, so that's still in the realms of possibility. But the bowl I'm gonna rusticate, there are a couple of sand spots. The grain is there, but it's not great. It's okay. I could certainly make it look nice, you know, with the contrast staining, but it's I kind of did set out to do smooth top and rusticated bottom, so we'll see how that goes. The initial view of the grain before I started sanding indicated rustication. And what I found with a lot of my smooth pipes as well is that there were some little ridges as you sort of feel around it, and I've taken to doing a lot more sanding now, even though on the wheel I can go up to 400 grit, but because of the motion you tend to just do sort of lines of sanding, and those need to be sanded out. So some people might notice on the pipes that I've made till recently, very recently in fact, that they could find some ridges along on the smooth pipes. They look beautiful. I mean, they're completely sanded as they should be, and the grain is as it should be, and everything's fine. But if you're really, really sort of fussy about it, you might detect some very, very minor ridges, and that's because I used to go up to 400 grit on the sanding wheel, and I would still sand, but not as much. But now I'm sanding a lot more afterwards by hand to get rid of that and make sure everything is smooth as it should be. So I'm not going to go too crazy here because I am rusticating. Yeah, that new pipe, Jimmy, really turned out very, very, really nice. The accent, you're absolutely right, it contrasts very well. So the shaping is pretty bang on. I don't have to worry too much about it being absolutely smooth because of the rustication. Well, they've definitely increased the number of tests here going on, but it's still only for the frontline people. But they have now today announced that they're going to be testing all people in care homes. So they're now really having a major focus on getting the care home situation under control, because it has started to become its own pandemic or epidemic in this country. Yeah, I mean, the people in care homes are really the highest of risks. That's definitely been the thing with this virus, is that it's just attacked the old and the weak relentlessly. How are things looking in Canada at the moment? Hey, Nick, Polish Piper, is in the house. Sitting myself all in the week. How are you doing, Nick? Nick has had a bit of a resurrection. He was a lot more active a few years ago. Very funny guy. And I guess the coronavirus has given a lot of people the opportunity to get back in and spend more time on YouTube. Nick, have you left all your old videos on? Are they all still on your channel? Silver lining, yeah. Oh, cool. Well, guys, have a look at his channel. Go through some of his older stuff from go through his current stuff as well, but you can learn lots about beer and that kind of stuff. He's a big beer man. And likes doing videos in the bath. That should get people coming to your channel. It's definitely a lot better than it was, Nick. Beer. He does lots of videos going to different beer places, if I remember correctly. All right, so I think we can start rusticating. So there's the overall shape, a nice rhodesian, very, very slight upturned shank, very slight, but it should still just make it that little bit more comfortable. We'll give this stem a very slight bend, and it should be just right. still deciding whether to leave the shank smooth. The shank's got some nice grain running up the side of it. One little sand spot there. I don't know if you can see that. So you can see the grain there, and there, and there's some bird's eye on the top as well. But I'm not sure I'm going to leave it. Hey Phil, how you doing? Phil Rivara in the house, everybody. I'm just making this little stubby Rhodesian, and it's looking pretty good, and we're going to rusticate it. Roofing, is that roofing of your garage or roofing generally? Weren't you building a new garage or something for somebody? Buddy next door, yeah, that's right. I've got to actually look you up, Phil, for a, as you call him, a stick. My dad uses a walking stick, but it's got to be really functional. It's not a, wouldn't be one of your classy gentleman type sticks. It would have to be functional. It would have to have the top bit. Your ones tend to have a knob. If you can do something which is, you know, obviously I know you'll finish it as you always do, but in terms of having that top bit so that you can grip it properly, is that something you can do? Hey Mark, how you doing? Oh right, okay, you do it with horn. All right, we'll get in touch at some point. I'll have a chat with my dad first. I don't think so. I'm not a big expert, Andrew, but I don't think so. In the recent new releases, you know, if you remember when I went to the last Nottingham Pipe Show 2019, they were giving out testers of new blends. One of them was a Perique flake, so I think it may be a new flake. You'd have to check, but I think the Louisiana is an older blend. I've had that before, and I think I still have a little baggie of it upstairs. And I think the Perique flake is a new, possibly the little squares, I'm not sure. Chris Kelly of the Black Swan. You talking about from the shop, or is that somebody else, Chris Kelly? Or are you talking about Eldridge? Right, I thought as much, yeah. A very inventive guy is Chris. I tried out a couple of his rods. I should really get some more and try them again. He bought one of his skull tampers. He's playing around a lot with sort of blending acrylic with a shank, and it looks amazing. Some of the pipes that he puts together are just absolutely amazing. I think I do have that Perique blend. I have to check upstairs. I certainly had some, but it may have finished. I don't know. They only gave you a bit at the time. Gauntleys, yeah. I haven't actually. I don't think I've ever bought there. I think maybe my Dunhill came from there actually. What, casting you some custom colours there, Phil? Skulls, not his skills. His skills are also great. I actually thought you were saying skills. He's doing a lot of different videos now, a lot of reviews, whiskies and reading books and tobaccos. He's putting out a lot of stuff. He's put together a new workshop. He's recently moved into a new workshop. So he went quiet for a while he was doing that. Briar acrylic. Oh, that's cool, Phil. So what, he would give you a block of it, the size enough to make a bowl out of? That's a cool idea. So it'd have to be quite a, you know, maybe a 2-3 inch square block. Is that what you're talking about? In the last few years, right? He does a very nice strawberry shape as well. It's like almost like a heart. Maybe that's the one you're talking about. Yeah, that's a neat idea. But the insert, obviously, you'd leave as briar, I assume. You'd have to have, obviously, complete separation from the acrylic. Acorn, right? Acorn strawberries, whatever, yeah. I've always been, Meerschaum, yeah, that's an idea. I've always been really taken by your calabash pipes. I haven't seen anybody else make them like that, especially the acrylic ones, although my one is a briar one from top to toe. But it's really classic shape, you know, people think about, even though I'm not so sure that Holmes actually smoked that kind of pipe, but I'm not a big Holmes aficionado at all. But it's still, the calabash gourd especially is a real classic shape. You talking to me, Jimmy? A stubby billiard? Which stubby billiard is that? The last billiard I made was a rusticated one, and that one's gone. 9mm Meerschaum's hard to find? Maybe nowadays. I mean, when I was looking at them, I didn't really have any trouble with it. Hey, Rocking Steady, how you doing? Well, we had a guy come over who did our Pipe Club of London Meerschaum in 2018, I think it was, and he did quite a few 9mm. I actually bought 1 or 2 off him, which I've since sold, but I've kept the Pipe Club one. But he has plenty in 9mm. I have to, if you drop me a line, I'll dig up his details. I used to have a business card from him. Whether I've still got it or not is another question, but I can find out. Right, let's crack on with this. Actually, I'll leave that for the moment. Spalted mulberry, that sounds good. You once made me a tobacco tray a long time ago, which I've still got upstairs in my office. That was also from some spalted wood. I don't know which, but that's still, I look after that. It's in mint condition still. Sheraton Dunhill matches. Oh wow, it's been a long time, Andrew, since I've had one of those cigars. Really good cigars, the Late Hour. Really, really good. I've said it many times. I'm sure you've heard it. I'm not a big Davidoff fan when it comes to cigars. There's only 2 or 3 in the lineup that I like. The Yamasa I remember enjoying, although I haven't had one for a long time. The Nicaragua is a good cigar. And the recent Late Hour. The Late Hour is just, for me, it's so close to Cuban flavors, but even without comparing it to Cuban, it's just got a great. It covers all the grounds, all the flavor profiles for me. It really, it's just everything of what a cigar should taste like. If you haven't tried that and you're a cigar guy, I definitely encourage you to get one of those. They are very expensive, Andrew. I will agree with you on that. Good evening, Meeks. Thanks for joining. I don't know how they've managed to maintain that price level. I really don't. They've, when I went to Switzerland that time, a couple of years back, I went into the Davidoff store, and their cigars were more expensive than Cuban cigars. In fact, the difference They were almost, I wouldn't say double, but they were certainly considerably more expensive than the Cuban ones. Oh, the lid tower, yeah, it's expensive. It's a Davidoff. I mean, but they are a really good cigar. And if you go out and buy one of the Aniversarios from Padron, you also pay a premium for them. Here, some of them are crazy money. I mean, generally speaking, if you go into a B&M here, you'd expect to pay maybe a third less for a non-Cuban cigar. But the truth of the matter is I find the price is becoming really close. I'm not sure if that's because of the cost of bringing them in and the tax, or whether it's because they're just taking advantage because people are used to paying £20 for, say, a Robusto, or £25. So they'll pay for any Robusto that kind of money. I don't know if that's what it is. But to get a decent Anniversario, some of them are £70, £80. You're talking $100. That's a lot of money. Yeah, I know. He bought I think a couple of thousand. President Kennedy bought a couple of thousand Monte Cristo No. 4s, which is the cigars that he smoked, and he told his aide to go and buy them before he signed the ban. Talk about inside knowledge. You talking about this pipe, or you're talking about the rusticated one, Jimmy? Jimmy, I think you need to refresh your page. I think you're about 15 minutes behind, or maybe 5 minutes. Hey, North Country Fisher, how you doing? See how you get on with the 9mm. If you didn't need to, though. Pipe 126. Which one was that? Oh, the blonde. What are you talking about? The big Rhodesian? Moon Trance. Isn't that the CAO one with the blue tin? You know, I think I actually have a tin of that. I think I got that from the late Danny Shaw, if I'm not mistaken. I'm kind of tempted to leave that shank smooth. That will pop really nicely. There's some nice bird's eye on the top of the shank as well. Might just have to do that. Right, I'm going up to 400. I should have some of that in the large paper. I do need to re-up on sandpaper. Go through it really quickly, and it is actually pretty expensive. Gotta say, it's one commodity which I do find I go through quickly, and it's expensive. So I use these rolls quite a lot. I've got this in 150, 240, 320, and 400. And they come in handy. Good night, Rich. Thanks for joining. Yeah, I use Feebings. When I first started, I was using stuff which I could get here, which is a chestnut, but it's completely not the right stuff. I mean, it's okay. I use one in particular, which I've got a large bottle of, is this one here. It's a very, very light stain, and when I'm doing not necessarily a contrast stain, but when I'm doing a stain and I want to get the grain through, but I need to just unify it, you know, I don't want to have it just the briar colour and then the grain. Then I'll use that just to give a slight stain to the whole thing, and then the grain pops through that. So that's a good stain for that. But the for my stains now, I use the Feebings all the time. Filters that I use are Dr. Pearl 9mm by Vaughan. Do I like the robust lines of late 19th, early 20th century? I'm not sure what you're referring to, Phil, I'm afraid. I assume you're talking about pipes, but... Or are you talking about cigars? I haven't really, Jimmy. What I've tended to do is I bought a box of these disposable pipettes, and I do it in very small amounts. And I did at one occasion start to sort of, so this is, you know, half a milliliter, 1 milliliter, and that kind of thing. So I did, but to be honest, I've been using pretty much straight stains recently, so I haven't really had much need for that. Yeah, no, I just use straight colors. It's either brown, dark brown, medium brown, black. I just stick to it. It makes life a lot simpler, and I'm really happy with the results. You know, in the beginning I was experimenting with trying to get colors which I'd seen on some high grade pipes like the Danish pipes, but I've kind of developed my own sort of way of doing the staining. It's I mean, it's nothing new, but just the extent of how you apply it, and how much you take off the top layer and how much you leave on, and to get that sort of faded in effect. I'm just kind of developing it as I go along, and it's going well. I'm really happy with the results. So if I'm happy with it, you know, and people are buying them, you know, I'm not gonna. There's no need really to deviate. Yeah, that's true. I mean, depending on where you're getting your blocks from, especially if you get your blocks from different sources. So you can have some blocks which are almost brown naturally, and some which are white almost, and it will look different. You know, you could use the same stain, but the darker briar will obviously look darker, and it's harder to get a contrast stain with those because the base briar color is really dark already. So on those, a lot of times you just either stain them or rusticate them, or just have a darker stain possibly, or not stain very much, depending on how the grain is situated. Oops. Well, I'm sure Phil is more of a master, but because I'm using stems most of the time, pre-pressed stems. So I have to go by the depth of this area here. But in terms of the mortise, mine are 18 mil roughly. And the 18 mil because they are predominantly made for 9 mil pipes, 9 mil filters. I find, Phil, as well, that the browns, the Phoebing browns, that they also come up with a bit of a reddish sort of hue to them when you sand them back sometimes, especially on a rusticated pipe. Yeah, I'm getting old. Got to take my glasses off sometimes. Right, excuse me just for a second. I've got to get on the lathe. Back shortly. So that gives you some idea of what that will look like. I'm going to sand that back, but there's some nice grain there. So next is we're going to start some rusticating. Good luck to you, Andrew, for sticking with it on the tenon cutter. I struggled with it. I found it to be that may have been to some extent to do with my lathe, because my lathe does have a bit of wiggle. Nice and shiny, the stem. I think in terms of colour on this one, I might just go with a button polish on this one. I do like the button polish finish. The recent Lovat that I got from Ian Walker, Northern Briars, that one was finished in button polish, and I just like that finish a lot. What do you lubricate your drill bits and stuff like that when you're drilling acrylic or ebonite fill? Just a spritz of water or something like that? I did notice that sometimes, what I tend to do is I only drill a bit and withdraw it, but sometimes it does get quite hot in there. Yeah, I was wondering the same thing, Phil, which is why I didn't answer. Wait to see what he says. Rocking steady. Who were you asking that question to about available pipes? I do have a few. I've got a... what have I got? Well, I've got that really... Well, just look back at the last few videos, you'll see what I've got. Yeah, I did use WD-40. I figured that would make sense. In the past I have used WD-40. Yeah, Philadelphia, it's a pretty rudimentary tool, but I'm pretty sure most of the C-Rock style rusticators use this kind of device. Castello do it, if you can see them online on YouTube doing it. There'll all be versions of this same concept, which is basically a bunch of nails close together, sharpened, and you're off. Hey Glenn. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward, Andrew. All I did was I took a piece of briar, drilled a hole, filled it with nails. The nails I trimmed off the top of the nail using the Dremel tool with a grinding disc. I sharpened each of the nails on my grinder, and they're already dulled quite a bit now. I sharpened each and every one of them. You can see the angle there. And then tied them with a cable tie to hold them all grouped so they shouldn't move around. And I used epoxy glue, filled it with that, and let it overfill so that it builds up around the base. And I left it for a few days to cure, because even though it gets hard, you don't want to, you start doing that with force, and then it starts to move around. So I would leave it, 2-3 days to cure fully. There's a lot of glue in there, and I've only ever made one, and it's lasted me. I've been using this probably for about a year now, and I just spent time shaping it on lathe, just to make it as comfortable as possible, because no matter how well you shape it, it's a lot of force on there, and it does get you sore, which is why I've started using this glove, just to give a little bit of padding. Have you tried, Phil, have you tried making stems from Eldridge's rod stock? The stuff that he's made? Rhinoplastic, not heard of that. What is that made for predominantly? The interesting thing is that ebonite is used for mouthpieces for trumpets and flutes and that kind of thing. I don't know which business uses it more, pipe making or the music industry, but when you look on SEM's website, there's pictures of musical instruments that they've got on there, I think, the last time I looked. I found them, I used them, he sent me a sample rod when he made a couple of batches ago, and that was one of them there, which is a stem which I made at the time. And it's for a long sort of Canadian hybrid. I found it very, very easy to sand and polish. I found the bending of them a little bit more challenging, but in those days I didn't have any experience really in bending stems, not much anyway. So I want to give them another go. I've heard that the Japanese one is not as good as the German ebonite, generally speaking. Is that right? Got to be careful when rusticating near edges, because it can just flip a chunk out. So you got to do that gently. Yeah, you're talking about Chris's ones, Phil, in terms of subdued colouring. I'm the same. I do find them a little bit too colourful. When I first started using stems, I was doing all kinds of different colours. I was doing lots of blues and greens, and I still have them, and occasionally I'll do one, but it's pretty much black or brown nowadays. Definitely got a more traditional bent in terms of my tastes and the styling. Yellow, yes, Josh. Still there, are you? Josh likes his yellow stems, everybody. I'm not sure what he's trying to match them to. Starting to work up a bit of heat now. Gonna start sweating soon. Yeah, 7, absolutely. I don't remember, Mike. I don't know. I'd have to look back. I don't recall. It's possible that I recorded one and didn't edit it and upload it. It's possible, because I do record lots of things and don't just never get around to editing them and putting them together and uploading them. I mean, this week in the morning, in my drives, I think I only uploaded 1 or 2, but I actually did one every day. But I just don't always get around to it, and then after a day or 2, it's kind of not topical anymore. It's worthwhile making a smaller one, because when you want to get into the smaller areas like this, so that knocks against it, so I can't get in there. If you get longer nails, there's going to be too much wiggle room on them. So I've taken a flathead screwdriver and with an angle grinder, I don't know if you can see that, there you go, and I've just created some teeth out of it. It's sharp like a razor, and it really gouges out big chunks of briar if I'm not careful. They're getting there, definitely getting there, Josh. It's pretty straightforward. It's not rocket science doing this, making one of these tools. The thing is that as much as you can, and now my one is not perfect in that respect, as much as you can, try to ensure that the tips are level. Otherwise, you're going to be digging in and only one head is going to be making an indentation. So that's one area which I... there you go, fills, and it read my mind. Yeah, getting them in the right position is key. It's just a shadow. You can see it's a little bit shallower there. just go over it a couple of times just to get it a little bit deeper. Now sometimes I'll finish it just like that without doing anything else, but and just put a shellac over the top of it. And sometimes I'll go over it with a wire brush on the lathe to just give it a little bit of a uniform look. But in actual fact, this one, because I sanded it pretty well to almost a finished kind of shape, it doesn't really need it because it's really very, very uniform, the profile of it. So you can see that profile there is really very, very, very straight. I don't blast fill. That's something which is yet to come, please God. I actually looked at a sandblaster on Friday because I'd bought a motor, and I'm still struggling with the whole motor thing, but it wasn't the right thing, so I took it back. And whilst I was there, I saw that they had a sandblasting cabinet. Okay, that's a good idea, Phil. The only thing with that is that it does smooth off some of the edges, and you end up getting, it takes away the cragginess, and you get some smooth, and it does allow through a bit of that grain, a little bit more of the grain, but because I'm going for a button polish finish, it doesn't really make a lot of difference. The button polish is essentially a shellac with a stain, with a golden hue to it, a brown, tan, golden hue. So I'm just going over it with 600 over the smooth parts, and what I find this does, it just gives it that little extra bit of smoothness, a little bit of extra shiny finish on the smooth parts. I know a lot of carvers don't go beyond 400, and some go up to much higher numbers, you know, up to in the thousands. But I've tried all of that, and I've tried finishing at 400. But I find that this is the sweet spot. I'll go for 600, even 800, and that's about it. Yeah, I don't have a choice, Phil. You know, I've got to rusticate. If I'm not doing smooth, I've got no choice. I did reach out to a couple of carvers to ask them if they would do sandblasting for me, but I didn't even get a response. So I'm not going to say who, but That's interesting, Phil. I've not experienced that myself. You know, I've never had an issue with. Oh, you mean sealing it in terms of not allowing it to breathe, or in terms of letting the stain get absorbed? What are you referring to? You can get an idea of the bird's eye there. Are you talking about in terms of letting the stain in, or just generally sealing the briar up in terms of its heat distribution and that kind of thing when it's being smoked? I always find that, you know, as long as I sand it before I stain, it opens it up and it takes the stain in really very well. Staining process, right? I have to say I haven't really had that problem. I generally, as I say, I generally finish at 600 before I stain. I'll give it a blast on the lathe with a brush, with a mop, just to smooth it out, and then I'll resand it again like I've just done now to open it up again. Then I'll stain, and then after either the next day or after a few hours, I'll go through into the final stage of, you know, of getting that grain, that contrast stain. Okay. I do actually flame pretty much every time now when I'm doing the staining between each coat, and that seems to work very well. Well, Phil, I don't think there's many out there who have got as much experience, especially with all the experimentation that you do, so it's all good information. And like I've said many times, you've been one of those guys who's been very, very open with your knowledge, experience, and you've been very patient with me as well, so I'm certainly very grateful for everything that you've helped me with. So I don't want this stain getting into the rusticated area, so I've got to be careful, because I want to do a tan, a button polish finish. Patient, I've been with you, why? I don't flame the first layer because that absorbs really quickly, and there's nothing left by the time I've gone round the pipe. It's all dried up already. So it takes a couple of layers before the liquid sort of stays liquid long enough for me to be able to flame it. Got to get another bottle of this stuff, almost at the end of it. I haven't found it so easy to get the big bottles here, although I did find one company. I need to make an order, because some of the colours you just use more often. You go through them more quickly. Absolutely, Phil. Yeah. Do you mean deprecating, or do you actually mean defecating? Oh man, that's funny. Oh, that tickled me pink, did that? That's your self-defecating sense of humour right there. Well, my English comes from my parents, but from listening to a lot of radio when I was a kid. Radio 4 especially. Radio 4 is the quintessential English radio station, BBC Radio 4. But it comes, I suppose, from my parents. They always spoke a very, very good English, as did my mother's parents, my grandparents. See, by the time I get around the pipe, it's already pretty much dried. Well, I'm going to be using button polish, which is like a tan coloured shellac, to go on the bowl, on the rusticated areas, and the smooth rim and shank will be the same as the rest of my pipes. It'll be by the time I've taken back the layers, it'll just be a nice contrasting. Hopefully on the rim we'll get some nice bird's eye. You can see there are a couple of sand spots there, a couple of pits, so that I'll have to try and be careful to keep around those so they're absorbed. But there is, because they're sand pits, they're not completely level with the briar, so there will be some visibility. Not that I'm trying to hide it, but just for the aesthetic aspect of the pipe, so that it should, look okay. I don't hide, flaws in the pipes. Whenever I'm showing the pipes, I think I actually show too many of them. People are forever telling me that I should just show the pipes and let people make their own minds up, but I just can't seem to keep my mouth shut. See, it's not even flaming because it's just drying straight off. To stain exactly, Philip, you got it on the button. Usually I'll just keep going with the layers until it's almost black. Even though it's a brown, medium brown stain, I'll just keep going until it becomes opaque, and then I'll leave it. Sometimes it could take as many as 10 layers, something like that. Just got to be patient, keep working at it, slowly but surely. So when you start to try and speed things up, you make, see here, if I just go too fast, I'm going to end up splashing the briar, which means I'm going to have to re-rusticate that spot, and I just don't want to have to do that, especially since part of it is already stained. You end up getting dust on the stained parts. It's just not worth trying to speed it up. One of the most versatile tools, pipe cleaners. Well, if you're gonna mix your own and you get it in powder form, then you would, I guess, mix it with the alcohol to get the stain that you want. I mean, you can get water-based stains as well, but obviously you can't flame those, and nobody seems to use them that I'm aware of. Now, a lot of people, they will leave the pipe overnight, which I'll probably have to do as well. But I find that sometimes when I do that, depending on the briar, that it leaves, too much of an effect on the lighter parts of the briar, which you want to stay light. So I will only leave it 4 or 5 hours, and I'll get the desired effect that I like. Alright, we're getting pretty close. This might be the last layer, we'll see. Alright, I think we're there. So, there is the smooth areas. And we'll leave that overnight, and I guess tomorrow, the truth is I could really put the button polish on as well, but I'm just a bit worried about it bleeding into each other, ending up with a mess, so I'm going to leave it. I'm not going to do the button polish today. Yep, definitely do that. Alright, so that's going on my peg. That'll stay there. Now, let's light up the pipe. I haven't had my nana yet. Where's my nana? Here's my nana. It's 2:20. Down the hatch. Remember this pipe? It's been sitting in my drawer here, waiting for a restain. It's got some very nice grain. Bucket of guy. Remember this fella? I gave it a bowl coating. I haven't actually looked inside to see what the finished result looks like. Yeah, something like that, Phil. So I don't know if you guys remember this pipe, but this pipe had a ridiculous amount of issues. And there's the drill hole right at the bottom, almost like a calabash. And it's all nice and smooth inside now. But the grain on this is just crazy. Got a little bit of plateau there. Awesome cross grain there. And I made this out of faux ivory. You can just about see some grain in there. Just a stunning pipe. This pipe in the hands of a real expert, perhaps one of the Danish guys, would be selling for 10 grand. But in my hands, it's firewood. That is a smaller bowl diameter. It's probably 18 mil. Might even be less than that. And there was a reason for it. I don't remember anymore. Yeah, it's 18 mil. And this one here I did not so long ago with that faceted shank. But I just wanted to touch it up as well. A few bits, I've got to resand it and restain it. A little bit of ultimate shaping, which I still want to do. I've noticed afterwards, oftentimes I look back at a pipe and I'll notice that there's an issue with the shaping. So I've got to take a little bit off there and a little bit off the top, which I'm not happy about, but there you go. One day we'll get around to it. Hey Arthur, how you doing? You're very close, Phil. It's 18 and a half. I really like the scallop shanks as well. I didn't even think of doing it with this pipe. I could have done it with this pipe. Could still do it, but probably won't. Well, we can either go OGS, Only Golden Sliced, or we can have some more of the Solani 131. What about my appendages? You ain't seen my appendages. You better not have. OGS, absolutely, Josh. Maybe it is 1:30. I don't know. I have to look back at my feed to see where we're up to. I don't remember. Sounds about right. It's either 1:29 or 1:30. But it's officially being made for myself. We'll see if it ends up that way. Hey, dude. Tree, you're a bit early, aren't you? Haven't you got... oh, you haven't got one, have you? There's no... no boot shows at the moment, eh? I think this was my first Rhodesian. Smoke's great. Well, Phil, I'm sure I can drop you a line so you can put a face to the voice, to these beautiful dulcet tones. But I don't put my face in the public arena. I don't want to scare everybody off. I've got a pretty good following on the channel. I don't want to spoil that. How you getting on, Tree? How's the isolation going? And how's Mrs. Tree? All good? Trying to keep to my word. Try and keep the desk tidy. You see, Josh, I've got you in mind. This is on my desk, waiting for the right thing. It's right here in front of me. My little strop for when I sharpen my chisel. Yeah, it is, Mike, absolutely. Got one out here and one upstairs. It's seen better days, but it gets used all the time. They're fantastic. Simple and effective. And I couldn't afford his new ones anyway. Yeah, Tree, still using that out here. This is my workshop tamper. Tree made for me. Excuse me. That's the banana going down. Phil, when you do a 9mm tenon, do you glue one in or do you cut it out of the stem? When you make a 9mm pipe, do you glue in a tenon or do you cut it out of the stem? There's some guys out there who makes just some crazy pipes. Check out Beamer pipes. Go wacky with heat. Yeah, yeah. I generally always glue in cones. I know where I am with that. It saves so much time. The one thing which I struggle with a lot is facing off stems. I use oh, my brain's gone. I use Forstner bits, and generally speaking, 9 times out of 10 it works fine, as evidenced by the pipes that I sell. But a lot of times, I just can't get a precise, an absolutely precise join. Sometimes I'm very, very critical, maybe too much so, but I want it to be absolutely spot on. And sometimes I can't do it. Sometimes it just won't happen. When you've got rod stock, how do you face it off? What's your starting point? How do you get your starting point? On the Briar, it's never a problem. I've got some really good sharp Forstner bits, expensive German-made Forstner bits, but they don't seem to react as they do with wood. With wood, it's spot on. It cuts it beautifully, but it doesn't cut because plastic is more brittle, so it can sort of chip away at it. So I've developed this, getting at the right speed so it does, and I do it very gently and it works. But there are times when I just simply cannot. I don't know if that's to do with the density of the material. I do countersink the mortise a bit. But it shouldn't really affect the facing of the stem though, even before I've married it to the pipe. Even from a rod stock, just getting here's a nice big fat bit of Cumberland or brindle. How do you get that flat to start with? Slightly concave the area at the tenon. This allows outer rings of flats on shank stem to mate up. Yeah, I mean, you can use a disc sander, but you could end up just going at it 10 times and you still won't get it right. Slightly concave the area at the tenon. This allows the outer rings of flats on shank stem to mate up. I understand what you mean by concave. So you mean not to do it with a forceps, but to do it with, to actually do it, to turn it, to do it with a, to cut it flat. Is that what you're saying? I understand that. So what you're saying is that when I'm doing it, I should do it at a slight angle going inwards. So you're saying is cut it at a bit of an angle, like that, so that it produces a bit of an angle, and you got, let's say, the tenons over there, so the line would be, I mean, I'm exaggerating, yeah, but that kind of idea into the center. But you obviously have to be, you got to do it at the same angles on both, no? Oh no, it doesn't really matter what's behind the straight line, I guess. It's up behind the face. I hear what you're saying. It would need practice, I think. And then again, also, you couldn't sand it too much, because if you sanded it too much, you hit those voids, and they might be slightly different on the tenon and stem, no? On the stem and shank. Yeah, but those old school pipes, they tended to be done with machines, and they had the lead drill for the mortise and the countersink done at the same time. Any video that I've seen of people doing that, they've got their things rigged up to do it all at the same time. So it's going to be exactly the same every time. I get what you say about the weather, but heat changes, temperature changes. I'm not talking about that. That's a different issue, a different problem. But I'm talking about where the circumference of the stem will waver. In other words, it will be wavy. Obviously, I'm talking about nanometers, but but when you marry it to the shank, you'll see a micro gap in parts of it. Do you have very extreme weather temperatures where you are, Phil? Not such a big problem here in the UK. My pipe's doing weird things. Yeah, absolutely, Phil. Getting a metal lathe has been on my mind for quite some time now. I was thinking of even getting one of those small metal lathes, the cheap ones. I suppose cheap doesn't make any sense, but just a mini metal lathe for that purpose. I don't know if, I see people with these huge, great, whacking big lathes, but for making a pipe, I don't know if that's so necessary, or is it necessary to have that bulk and weight for it to be 100% true? Weather versus Richter. Well, thankfully, we're not on any... we have plenty of faults, but we're not on many. All right, cool, Phil. I don't think I've actually even got Skype installed on my phone. I'll have to. I have done it in the past when it first came out, but I guess it's a lot better nowadays. Dr. Lamb, isn't that one of the sub brands of K Woody? Don't get me started on Peterson pipes. Everybody's using Zoom now during the coronavirus. What make is that, Mike? Looks like McDonald's. Warrobiek. Interesting name. Nothing quite like cold coffee. Oh, right. Well, thank you. At least somebody agrees with me. They're very iconic, but they are, to me, I don't know. I don't like dissing other people, but never yet seen a well-drilled Peterson. I don't know if things have changed since smoking pipes took over, but is that a straight one, Mike, or a bent one? It could just be that the mortise needs drilling a bit, or you could possibly trim the end of the tenon. Perhaps there's been a bit of expansion there, or perhaps it just wasn't drilled correctly, or the tenon made correctly. Which is a bit odd with Peterson, seeing as they're probably all made on a phrasing machine. Yeah, I mean, $750 mil. Very Irish. Took me a while. There was something I was going to ask and it slipped my mind now. Well, my biggest whinge about Peterson is when they chopped up my pipe. Still can't get over that. The mattress pipes are all sitting upstairs still, waiting for the right moment to do the auction. Still haven't received that one from Dragonbriars, so that's not going to happen. Yeah, we got that, Phil. You could send it back to them. They'd probably fix it for you, but you might wait forever till you get it back. You're better off taking it into a pipe shop and asking them to adjust it for you. Difficult to know what to do with the auction, when to do it. You know, countries are starting to emerge from the lockdowns. You know, and economies hopefully will pick up, get kick-started. I think a lot of people are struggling out there. As would I be if not for my pipe making. Really, timing on it has just been a godsend for me. My photography is dead in the water at the moment. Which, this one here? Yeah, I'm a photographer by trade. That is my main trade. Just check that stem. A bit like the Oceano from Savinelli. I haven't used this yet. I'm kind of doing the darker ones generally. It's not worth it, Mike, to be honest. Not on a Kerry anyway. Hey, Boca. It's getting rather nippy now. It's 10 to 3 in the morning. What's news at your end, Boca? How's the shore? What time will I get up tomorrow? Don't know, we'll see tomorrow. It really depends on the wife and whether she's hell-bent on us going out or not. Usually the way it will work. Yeah, so usually if the wife wants to go out, then I'll tend to get up a bit earlier. But in terms of cameras, I'm a Canon man. So I've got, at the moment, a couple of system cameras, but the ones that I use professionally are the 5D Mark II and the 5D Mark III. The 5D Mark III is my workhorse. The 2 is the backup, used to be my workhorse. The Mark III is now falling apart. I've had to, believe it or not, super glue certain bits together. I don't want to go out and buy a new body at the moment. They're still really expensive to get the Mark IV. And I don't like buying second-hand cameras for professional use. I buy second-hand cameras for hobby cameras, but not the ones that I use professionally. Well, the lenses I've got are 50mm 1.4, 24-105 f4. I've got 2 of those. I've got 70-200, and they're all L lenses, by the way, except for the 50mm. So if you know your Canon lenses, you know what that means. They're all professional quality lenses. And generally speaking, I have the 5D Mark D battery grip. 24-105 rarely comes off. It's such a flexible lens that you can I can cover a wedding pretty much almost completely with a 24-105. Yeah, nothing wrong with Nikon 28-70, why not? Nowadays, Nikon, Canon, they're all great. The Sonys are fantastic. Olympus, Panasonic, they're all doing great stuff. I just stick with Canon because my glass is all Canon, all the lenses are Canon. So to start shifting, people used to do that. Canon and Nikon were always fighting for supremacy, and people would sometimes realign their whole kit, and that's a very expensive thing to do. Yeah, no, I haven't got time for that, Phil, to start messing around with all the different types of lenses. I just stick with Canon. When you start having to get adapters and things like that to fit sort of more exotic lenses, that's really a hobbyist kind of thing to do, and that's good fun. But when you're trying to shoot a wedding and you need to know what you're doing and you need to be able to rely on your kit, you just can't be messing around with adapters and things like that. I'm so used to the way Canon works, I doubt I'll ever change over. Although both of my 24-105s, I both now take off the stabilization, because they both need servicing. They're used so much. I really do hammer them. And what's been happening recently is that when I'm focusing, the lens vibrates. Although the image stabilization, the little motors, the little gyros that control the lenses, they've become a little bit unstable. So when I'm taking the shot, the whole picture blurs because the lenses are shifting around and they kind of get lost. So I've had to turn them off. And but because of the lighting that I use, that stops the image anyway. I don't really need the image stabilization that much. So I just haven't bothered. I've just turned it off. I should really get them sorted out. Maybe now is the time to do it, while I'm not working. But it also costs money, which I'm not earning at the moment from the photography. The PC socket on the side, which I use all the time, that got loose. And it was only firing some of the time. So I've had to super glue that in, and it works a treat now. So what body are you using there, Phil? Did you say already what you're using? 500D. 500D. Yeah, it's pretty good. What is that, about 10 years old, Phil? Something like that? $300mm. Are you using a tripod at 300mm? Or a monopod? What are you shooting most of the time? Scenery? Landscapes? Sports? Birds? Yeah, I guess so. Birds and wildlife don't have tripod time. I can understand that. What kind of shutter speed are you going for wildlife? Yeah, I can understand that. When I first picked up a camera, it was film, but digital had already become completely universal by the time I was thinking about going professional. If you remember, there was a Nikon camera, I think it was called a 990 or something like that, where it had two halves of the body and it twisted. So you had the screen on one half and the lens you had to twist. So it was, so if you like, the body was like that and the lens was like that. And I loved that camera. It had a small little screen on the back. It was I think it was one of my first, maybe the first digital camera. And then they updated it to another model and I got the new model. Absolutely loved that camera. The beauty of it was that you could twist it and get really interesting angles. You could do really low down shots. Yeah, more than likely, Andrew, you probably saw lots of beige colored lenses there, which are the Canon long lenses. Some of those lenses are the size of a car. It's just crazy. It's quite comical because you see this huge lens with a camera on the end of it, and the camera is tiny compared to the lens. Good night, Mike. Thanks very much for joining. I'm going to sign off shortly as well. Just going to get to the bottom of this bowl. Now, you'd only have one tripod. It would be on the lens. The camera would just be... it's the dog wagging the tail when it comes to those big lenses, not the tail wagging the dog. See you, Guy. All the best. Later out. I'm surprised that 125th and that kind of region works for you in wildlife. It seemed to be too slow. When I'm doing weddings, I generally work at 160th most of the time, and sometimes 200th when I'm dancing, stuff like that. But the majority of the time, the lighting that I use stops the light. That stops the picture anyway. The flashes, their speed is much faster than the shutter, so you could really shoot it at even 30th or 40th, and it would still be fine, depending on the ambient light, of course. Squirrels, I thought we'd be shooting them with something else, not with cameras. But they are cute looking, aren't they? Excuse my bad manners. Right, everybody, I'm going to wish you all a wonderful morning. It's 3:05 a.m. Oh, an hour, yeah. Thank you very much for joining, everybody. Very much appreciated. A bit long and drawn out this evening. So thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Philadelphia. Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Guy. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Gamecock Piper. Boca. Mike. And everybody else. It's been a pleasure as always. Thank you very much. I will do, Josh. I will do. I'm not sure. I'll have to see. One of the main reasons why I was kind of considering it for myself is the... we'll see how well it lines up, because this was one of those examples where there's a minute deviation on that. So we shall see. And also the tenon has got a slight... It's veering off to the side there, very slightly. And although that makes for a nice tight fit, but that could be part of the problem. So we shall see when it finishes, if it lines up okay. then maybe I will sell it. If it doesn't, maybe I'll still sell it. We'll see. It's only going to be a hair's breadth. I mean, there's really going to be better than any Peterson that you'll find out there, but we shall see. I'm perhaps being a little bit too critical. I don't know. We'll find out in the final analysis when the pipe's finished. Good night, Tree. Thanks for joining. Good night, everybody. Morning, good night. Catch you on the next one.